started in just one moment. We're going to have Julie Wassom come online and join me in a minute here, and we're going to get underway. We see the participants really filling up the room, and hopefully everybody has a good connection today. So we're just going to have 1 or 2 moments before we get started. And there's Julie popping online now. So wonderful. And Julie, can you hear me?
I can. Hi,
Awesome.
Tony. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you again, Julie.
Yes.
And welcome. I'm going to go through an introduction with you in just a moment, but we're going to go ahead and kick off. This is probably this is wonderful, one of our biggest registrations. We have 500 for our Zoom, and I believe we maxed out in our registration for 500. So usually we don't get all that many that miss it, but there's a few who do. And for those, we are going to be sending out a replay, especially if you have to bolt for some reason during this. So we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. And today, what we're talking about in our executive webinar pop-up series is keys to recovering your enrollment post-COVID-19. This hits me personally. I own and operate my own centers, as many of you know, and like many of them who are members or not of Inspire Care 360, we know a number of you are either at very low enrollment, you're either closed and plan on reopening, and some of you are even considering whether you do want to reopen. And I know there's a lot of different dynamics and the challenges of how to get your staff back, how to leverage things like PPP, all those different elements. We're lucky enough today to talk with Julie on some of her thought and process for the years of experience and talent she's brought into this industry. So we're going to get started in just a second. I want to go through that agenda with you folks. And let me just click on the screen here. So we are in our welcome. First thing I want to do is give you just a little bit about our navigations. You will see at the bottom of your screen that we have a Q&A, raise hand, and a chat function. We ask that everybody use the Q&A. We're going to try to get to questions if possible. We have a lot of content today, which is wonderful. If we don't get to those questions, Julie and I will tackle those after and try to be as responsive to those questions as possible. Also, when you're in the process of asking a question, if someone's already asked the same question, all you have to do is click it, and it's going to make it rise to the top if more people have that. So we'll usually get to that quicker instead of just asking the same question again. For all of you who ask and need, you will receive an email if you've attended this, whether you attend this live, as we are live today right now, or if you happen to go through the replay. To get a certificate for this, you will have an email so you can fill out and produce your own certificate. So that is available to you, and we're very happy to do that. With that said, let's move forward. We're going to go through a couple housekeeping items, which we haven't done in a little bit, but we're really back in track now for some of the things that we want to cover. And these are really about Inspire Care 360. Before I do that, though, I want to introduce to you Julie. So this is Julie Wassom, and she's the president of the Julian Group, and I had the privilege to reach out and have a conversation with her almost 3-4 years ago, and had a wonderful conversation. Internationally recognized and expert with ECE and childcare, but I think a lot of you have already heard her name, or you know her personally, or you've worked with her, which is probably a real pleasure for you. And she is very much focused and has really been one of the leading individuals in coaching and building sales and marketing training programs throughout the industry. So if you haven't heard from her, you will have a chance to hear from her today, as well as some of her thoughts that apply extremely relevant about growth in the face of what we have going on with COVID. So let me do this. I just noticed quickly here that I have we're going to go into housekeeping right now. And our first thing is one of the things we're doing for all of our members for Inspire Care 360 is we're now offering, as of today, going forward, a free financial success assessment. Now, what this is many people have been looking at using PPP and how it is going to affect them. You've seen a number of our webinars on that. And you've also, what we're going to be doing is offering that from the RDG and P group who's been doing those webinars with us. They have paired up with us and they plan on doing this free assessment for you. It'll be comparative for your 2019. It's going to be looking at industry data It'll also be giving you a list of recommendations in areas in need for improvement if you're seeking, obviously, improvement in our finances. And I know I can use this myself, and I will be with them. And it also looks at the CARES Act of how it will actually apply to you and look at the stimulus opportunities you have, not only for applying PPP, but there's also a lot of back value for expenses and the like. And you would get out of this a green, yellow, and red, what I call a stoplight report. And what that basically does is that gives you a report that tells you green, you're doing great in an area, yellow, here's some tweaks you can make right now, or you can ask your own consultant to do that, or red, here's some things you want to get on right away. There's some burning opportunity to work on. This is free for our Inspire Care 360 members. And so as you need them, please reach out to Jen, Julie, Mary Jo, or myself, and we'd be more than happy to get you set up. The second one is, and this is something very exciting coming up, this summer, IC360 is rolling out something that I think has been really needed in this industry and has not been in this industry. We've always struggled with trying to provide a healthcare solution for the early learning teachers, as well as staff, administration. And major medical has really been difficult, not only because of the expense of it and the prohibitive expense of it, but also the high deductibles where people oftentimes don't use it. And we've learned right now through this pandemic that it's really a challenge that if our staff are sick and they're not taking advantage of a healthcare plan. So we have worked over the past year to put together a nationwide solution that is going to be for our membership that has anywhere from premiums as low as almost $45 for a single individual up for an entire family of 360, and there's a few different options all in between. That's the very lowest and the very top, but you get a lot with that for our teachers. It also meets the Affordable Care Act, and it has a lot of inexpensive visits to doctors, for specialists, and we're going to be having more come out about it. It's not ready for prime time yet. Don't ask if you can have it because we can't offer it yet, but it is going to be out midsummer. So we'll be talking more about that in the near future. The last item on our housekeeping is a reminder about our grow. And I know that Julie's going to talk a little bit about digital presence and how you're out there today. But one of the things we have is a division that everybody knows about who are members. And if those of you are interested in membership, that we are focused on what I call a win-win-win situation. That is, we are seeking for our membership to get some great value from also their ability to develop their digital footprint, from a website that really focuses on conversion to how they spend their ads and dollars, whether it be on Google, Facebook, or they're focused on their reputation, to getting them pushed up within the search engines. And if they're looking for a plan just to have one of those options, a couple of those options, write newsletters or blogs, or an entire outsourcing of that marketing that you're seeking, that is something Inspire Care 360 does in total. We do it specific for the ECE childcare industry. I've been doing it for a number of years, and we have negotiated the way that we have put our pricing together so we do it lower than the industry average. If you were to go to people who specialize it within childcare, or do it in particular just people within your community, we tend to be lower than that kind of pricing, very focused on results. So if that is something that you're interested in learning more about, please let us know. With that said, though, we want to go ahead, and I'm going to hand it over and welcome Julie. Julie, what's going on today? How are you doing?
Thank you, Tony, and welcome to everyone. I'm so glad to have so many of you with us. We are going to talk today about keys to recovering your enrollment post-COVID-19. And within our conversation today, we want to include a few things. One of them is the key marketing change that early childhood education businesses need to make post-COVID-19. We're also going to talk about some actions within your control to help you rebuild enrollment and specific techniques for things to do now that maybe are different from what you've done before. We're also going to touch on some of the important things about re-enrollment incentives. And we will hopefully have time to touch on enlisting partners to help you rebuild your enrollment faster.
That's
So a full
awesome.
topic of lots of topics.
You have a big agenda and I love it. So I'm going to let you keep on going, but you know me, I'll interrupt you too once in a while.
That's okay. That's fine. You see a symbol on screen, and that is what John Fitzgerald Kennedy described as the Chinese symbol for crisis. One brush stroke means danger, and the other brush stroke means opportunity. So in this time, in the wake of COVID-19, when so many things are uncertain and even a little bit scary for a lot of early childhood education companies, they are also ripe. These times are ripe with opportunity for you to build a really effective enrollment recovery plan and execute that plan. So there are some essential actions that you will need to take to regain enrollment on the time to profit runway that you have set coming out of the crisis, and to help you be able to build back your business so that it's sustainable in the way that you want it to be. And the very first thing I think we need to think about is that let's move on to the next slide, Tony, if we can. There's a marketing change, a key marketing change that you need to make. And what is the key marketing change? Well, it is to refocus your business model so that it's even more customer centric. Now, the core business of early care and education is not going to change. And, you know, optimizing the learning outcomes for children and excellent education is going to remain the same. What's going to change is the way your customers, their parents, I like to call the children the customer's customer, and the parents the customer. So your customers' needs are going to change. Employer models are going to change. So how they work will change, which means you'll have changes in how they use you and how they choose you. If they lost their jobs, they may not need the kind of service that you offer, or only part of that kind of service. So those needs are really going to change for them. And the economy, of course, it could be struggling for quite some time.
Yeah.
So there are many factors involved there. Pardon
May I
me?
ask you a question? I apologize. I told you I'd jump in once in a while.
Sure,
When you
no
talk
problem.
about key marketing changes and, you know, being more customer centric,
Yes.
you know, oftentimes we as childcare owners, we tend to be sometimes reactive to what happens in our marketplace. In other words, until people start saying stuff to us, that's when we tend to change or adapt. What kind of things would you recommend of being proactive that we could do to be in front of that in this time of opportunity as you position?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think the overall premise for that, Tony, is to always think in the prospect's perspective. I say that so much people tell me I should have a t-shirt with it on it. But you must think in the prospect's perspective, because thinking ahead, being proactive, they are going to need increased flexibility, your customers. They're going to need heightened communication, different and better and more than what you might do right now. And they're also going to need to have absolute clarity in what the value exchange is, what they get from you for the investment that they put into childcare. You know, your current families now, you can't just assume they're going to return. They need to become your prospects again for re-enrollment.
Yeah.
And new prospects are going to want even more information about your cleanliness and your sick policies and your classroom structure. So you constantly have to think in the prospect's perspective. Let's talk about, well, first let's maybe do a little poll. We have a poll that we'd love for you to complete, those of you who are on with us today. And it really asks you about your COVID-19 recovery plan. Would you mind putting that up, Tony?
Yep. All right, Hans, I'm going to ask you if you could put up the poll for everybody. And during this time, we're going to take a moment as Hans gets it published up. The poll is an opportunity for you folks here. Do you currently have a COVID-19 enrollment recovery plan? And what we mean is this something that not only have you thought through in your mind, but have you actually communicated it? And have you worked with your team on it? So let's just take about 10 more seconds. Obviously it's yes or no, so it's relatively quick. And then what we're gonna do is we will go ahead and close this out. So why don't we close it out, Hans, and get everybody's opinion on this. Look at that, surprisingly, Julie.
Okay, well then what I would like to address next is some actions you can take now that are within your control to put into your enrollment recovery plan.
Sure. Absolutely.
So let's move to that.
Is this the slide you're thinking here for you, Julie? Hopefully I've got the right slide for you.
Yes, you do. Thank you. That's perfect.
Okay. No problem.
So the first one is to reach out now to your families and also then communication. Let me separate those. Reaching out to your families means you're actually calling them. You can email them and send other kinds of messaging, but call every family so many per week and find out how they're doing and what their needs are going to be after they're quarantined. Ask questions like, when do you plan to return? What kind of schedule are you going to need that might be different from the one that you have now? What kinds of things would you like to know about what we're doing to address COVID-19 policies that are different from the way that we've run our school before? What kind of communication would you like? Would you like additional learning activities to do at home until we reopen? Ask those kinds of questions. And if you have someone who's really hesitant, maybe you set up a Zoom personal call with them just to reassure them and to let them know that you want to have a personal connection with them. Then use all this information that you get and put it into your marketing messages everywhere, whether you call it your messages, your brand, your narrative. These kinds of pieces of information that you get from parents when you reach out to them are very important for you to include in your communications now and moving forward. So
one of the things, Julie, I've learned from my centers, we're trying to do our best at not only knowing who's coming, but we're reaching out almost weekly to ensure not only are they coming, but just in line with what you were saying, what we're trying to do is we're asking questions we normally would never ask. We're asking questions like, so by the way, when things get started up, are you going to be staying home? Are you going to be working out of the house still?
exactly.
Or are you going to be going back to work? What is those things? And a lot of times our directors and ourselves and people calling out, we sometimes feel like we don't have the right to, but it is fair game to understand exactly what's going on with them. And they can always deny it, but you at least get to understand if you ask. You don't get what you don't ask for.
Well, then you can make what you do more customer-centric in how you structure yourselves after you're going to reopen, in the communication that you are going to give them now and in the future, and maybe even how you build some of your incentives into your re-enrollment incentive packages. So let's talk a little bit about communication. I think ongoing communication right now is a very important thing through multiple venues. The more you can position yourself as the knowledgeable, helpful expert your parents and prospects can trust, the more you will regain enrollment from your existing families and get new enrollments. So be the resource they need. You provide learning activities, many of you do, I hope you do, now while they're at home. But what else? Do they need, some schools are doing what they call porch pickup bags, which I think is such a great idea, of learning activities for parents. Will they want that continued? Maybe they will. But you can also provide to them links for fun things to do with their children, maybe family workouts or snacks or virtual children's museum tours. You can also provide frequently asked questions, the answers to frequently asked questions about COVID-19 policies in your school and what the new sick policy is going to be and how your sanitation procedures have changed. So you can do that. And you can also, don't forget about providing links for parenting support. Those people out there who can help the parents with children's behavior or with their own feelings around being isolated with their kids, and hopefully that will make them anxious to get them back to you. But those kinds of communications are really, really important to keep going right now. And I also think keep your social media active and monitor it, because that will give you the topics of interest to your target audience of parents that you can then put into communications in your emails, on your website, and on your social media. So what are you doing now, is my question to you, to maintain that bond with your families? You know, at least to do this, set a time every day to reach out to a certain number of your families, like you said you're doing, Tony. That's great.
Yeah. So a question for you, Julie, too. In line with rebuilding enrollment,
Yes.
we have, we have the opportunities to do this. There's a lot of things going around too that, we want to do proactive, just like what you were talking about, creative things, teaching things, distance, all those elements. There's things that are coming down from our local licensing in every state of what we can do, what we can't do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And not only is it sort of confusing for our centers and our directors, it's oftentimes confusing for parents to understand those guide rules. One person asked a question, how should we think about building enrollment when we will most likely have restrictions on the number of kids we can even have in a group? So with the number of these different dynamics, you talked about communication. How do you think we should communication about what our licensing requirements are, what the state is requiring from us?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. When I've asked a few parents what it is they're going to want when they return, one of the main things they say is transparent communication. So I think in the best way that you can, without getting into lots of lengthy language that's detailed and that they would not understand anyway, is to just be as transparent as you can with them about these kinds of things.
That's awesome. I think
now,
that's
another action though that's really important to do right now, and kind of along in line with that, is to define what does make you unique. Does this kind of communication make you unique? You have to define and market your benefits, because parents will go where they see the top value exchange. And one of the best ways to let them see that is, what can they get from you that they can't get from somebody else? I call these your basic competitive advantages, or BCAs.
Yeah.
And the best way to look for what those are is take a good hard look at what's unique about us. What's unique and different anyway, but what's really unique and different about us right now and moving into the future as we reopen. And also take a peek at your competitors. Look at their websites, see what they say they're offering. Now, lots of them have a long list of features, but those are their basic competitive advantages, as are yours. You want to be able to speak and write those in benefits, telling people what they get. And you want this everywhere. You want it on your website, you want it in your emails, you want it on your social media. A good visual way to do this is what I like to call making documentation of differences. These are flyers, they're posters, they're posts of a specific thing different about you than they may find in other options parents look for early care and education. And it can be something like, oh, I saw one that was a big poster of sanitation procedures that you now have in place. Or maybe it's a flyer about all the services you're going to add now for parents to reassure them that you're doing everything you can to provide what they need now as they come out of this isolation. And those documentation of differences can be a flyer in your parent packet. They can be put up in the center like this big poster was. They can also be on your website. So it's really important to be able to define and market and know your benefits and be able to put that message out there. I also think now, along that same line, but in a different medium, that you mentioned just a bit before, Tony, is something that you can help your members do. And this is to update your website. Now is the time to take a real hard, objective look at your own website and to assure that the site has both a strong connection for existing families, but also what it needs to generate the most inquiries from prospective new families.
Yeah.
So look at your analytics. Look at where people come to your website, not just the hits you get, but where they come and where do they take action? How long does it take them to take that action? You know, in order to increase the number of qualified inquiries that you get, I am a strong proponent of the fact that your website needs to go beyond education. It needs to have that there, but it needs to go beyond it to two things. And those two things are that it must engage and it must convert. So let me just give you a few of the things that you might think about for elements and see if these are on your site now. And if not, you can work on putting them on your site now. One of those is a navigational button on every page that says schedule a visit or schedule a tour. I like the word visit. I think it's warmer and more inviting, but whatever word you use, have that button on every page, and it links to a lead form that is a little more comprehensive than asking just the child's name and age and what their start date might be and maybe a comment box. You need more than that. And that lead form, once completed by the prospect, is submitted to your customer relationship management system or whatever database you use for follow-up. So that's one thing. Also, this is the time to add more recent reviews and videos. And I really feel like this is the time to put a really robust staff recruitment section on your website, a leg. They treat them almost like prospects for recruitment and make that a real comprehensive section. Another one area that you can look at on your website is how well does your parent portal serve the needs of your current families? Could that be changed a little bit? And another thing you can think about on a site is simply a resource library where you have maybe some of these documentation of differences or articles or links to experts. Remember, you want to be that knowledgeable, helpful resource that families can trust.
And you know what? I think
yeah.
what you're talking about is just amazing, you know, great, Julie. You know, when we think about differentiations, what I'd love to tell the audience out there too is, remember, saying we have a curriculum, saying that we're doing hot meals, saying that we're open these hours, those aren't differentiations. All of your competition is saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So if someone was to ask you at an event and say, you know, tell me the difference, Tony, between Inspire Learning and childcare and, you know, ABC childcare down the road, that question they just asked is exactly what Julie's saying is, what is that differentiation that is different, that truly is unique to you? Not just because we do something and we check the box, but we do something that is going to be different. And there's a lot of opportunity, but fully agree with her on it. You know, now is a time too that I think, Julie, a lot of people struggle with because everything going on with COVID, their revenues are down, and the you know, the number, the foot traffic obviously is down. And so it's tough for owners and operators sometimes to invest in website development and invest in ads and invest in these things. But, you know, what are your thoughts on the fact of having to, you know, dig a little deep at this point in time, because this is the time?
Well, it's really interesting you asked that, because it takes me right to my next point, which is now is the time to sharpen your enrollment conversion skills, because higher conversions faster will give you revenue that you need to be able to do the kinds of things you want to do now and going on in the future. Every single inquiry counts now. So anyone in your schools who is responsible for converting inquiries into tours and registrations has to be really proficient in their enrollment conversion skills, including follow-up. So sometimes people ask me, well, how do I do that now while we're closed? And, you know, we may have a status to open page on our website, which, by the way, is another good idea, but we're not open now. So how am I going to train my managers and anyone who's going to be involved in conversions in those skills that they need to maximize the number they can as fast as they can and generate the revenue we need? I think you can do it virtually now. I have a virtual program. It's called the Enrollment Accelerator. It's videos and an ebook. But you need something like that, that's easy access that's affordable. You were mentioning that, Tony. You want a program that's affordable, and you want it to be really user-friendly. So it provides that kind of training and practice now and on into the future, because the more enrollments you can convert faster, the more revenue you will gain. You also now, when you don't have that revenue, need to look at the potential return on those marketing efforts. How fast can you get it, and what will it be? And that can help guide you on where to put your dollars to maximize the impact of communicating your message and generating qualified increase for enrollment, and then using your skill training to convert those increase and get the revenue that you need.
Awesome.
That answer your question?
Absolutely, and thoroughly too.
Okay. You know, why don't we just do another poll right now
Awesome.
about how people are training their managers in enrollment conversion skills, or enhancing those skills, or checking in on those skills. Let's just see how people are doing that.
Yeah, so Hans will be putting up the poll here. And how do you currently train your directors in enrollment conversion skills? Virtually, including video, one-on-one coaching, virtual, phone, or in person, during director meetings, an enrollment building training manual, partner new center managers with an experienced director for onboarding in the areas, other approaches. And I know IC360 members also have our plethora of learning that comes to them for distance learning.
Can they answer multiple of these, not just one?
Hans would know that. We'll see if you can try it. Yes, if not, if it only works one, choose your top
Lots of
priority.
space there.
Exactly. So we will, but good question, Julie. Next time we will get that down if we didn't already. So why don't we go ahead and why don't we close out the poll and see what we happen to have, Hans. Thank you very much. Hans is sort of our magician behind the curtain for us, trying to make sure everything runs smoothly. But look at this. This is interesting. It's all over the board here, Julie.
Yes, but I'm so delighted to see that there's one-on-one coaching going virtually, on the phone, and in person. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
That is
Ooh,
really
good.
great.
This is great. And also during director meetings, which I assume are virtual now. So it looks like there's some real effort out there to sharpen enrollment conversion skills, and that's great.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on and talk about creating enrollment, re-enrollment incentives? Could we do that?
Yeah, here we go.
This is a prime time to be putting together programs that you can use to incent families to return, and also incent staff and your center managers to grow the center faster. So ways to think about to incent re-enrollment from your existing families might be things like staggering some savings into their first 3 months of tuition after you reopen, or doing a welcome back gift. And maybe the welcome back gift includes something that you get as an in-kind donation from a community partner that you have who's also trying to jumpstart their business, and is something that your parents would value. It's very important that you always be customer-centric. Think about what your families value and have told you they need. So a welcome back gift is a good re-enrollment incentive. Also, maybe think about thanking healthcare workers and essential workers. Maybe you don't raise their tuition until 2021. Or maybe you offer something like an increase in sibling discounts if you enroll within the first 30 days after you open. Now, one thing to be careful of is that many schools, most schools probably, are going to offer re-enrollment incentives. So you want to make sure yours are unique to what you can do within your services, and also that they offer things that your particular target audience of families will really value, and it's meaningful for them.
Yep, and I would just add on to that, one of your ideas just had me spur, there's a lot of local family diners and burger joints and things of that nature. What a great opportunity to solicit to them, to help build the traffic back to them, to be able to have maybe some kind of a meal or meal discount that everybody comes back, gets that with their one of the elements of the re-enrollment basket or what have you. And in turn, it drives traffic, and you can also push the fact that we're supporting the local businesses. So I think that is a fantastic idea.
Exactly, it's mutually beneficial. And And some of them, it's socially conscious to do that.
Yeah,
So it's a
community driven,
real good approach.
which I really love about that. The other element that I would just suggest, just from my own experiences, be cautious of discounts sometimes when the discount will go on forever. Okay. So I think what Julie was implying is short-term incentives and get them back on, but you're not living with that expense for a year or two to come.
Again, look at the return on your investment, on your marketing return of your marketing efforts. Let's also address, though, enrollment growth plans for center managers and staff. Your staff really are your marketing partners, and many families have their children who miss their teachers, and hopefully you've reached out to your teachers to thank them for what they've been doing to provide learning opportunities for children during this pandemic shutdown. But those staff people are going to really help you rebuild your enrollment. So they are your partners in that effort. And so I think including them in some of your growth incentive programs is a good idea. The directors and the managers, anyone who's involved in helping you grow your school, can be a part of these incentive programs. And remember, incentive programs, like you were mentioning, Tony, they are also something that is time limited. So they only go on for a certain period of time, but they are very, very results driven. They're toward meeting a certain goal you have for enrollment. And you can make them really fun. The rewards need to be meaningful to the people that are getting them. And that can help you build your enrollment even faster if you just do some of those things. Like you might have a contest for enrolling a certain number, very specific goal to reach, of new parents within the first 2 months that your center is open. So this is another action that you can take that's within your control, that you can do right now to build into your enrollment recovery plan.
Awesome.
Let's move on and talk about enlisting partners to help you rebuild enrollment faster. I like to say it takes a village. You really can't do this very easily alone. One of your partners that I forgot to mention before, that maybe some of you have, maybe some of you don't, but is to use a customer relationship management system. That's your marketing partner in building enrollment. And if you don't already have one, now is a good time to investigate one. You can go to my website. Under the resource button at the top, there's a drop down, and there's a tab for affiliates. The one I like to recommend is in there. It's Child Care CRM. There's a link. You can investigate that one to start your investigation. There are others out there, but now is the time to really investigate one. Now, other partner programs within your reach to take advantage of now and to work on now are referral programs. The first one is a parent referral program. If you don't already have an active, well-promoted parent referral program, now is the time to work on that. And if you have one, and many schools do, I know, if you have one, now maybe is a time to bump up that acknowledgement gift or that reward to something that's a little more than you usually do. Maybe for the next 3 months, any family that a parent refers, then enrolls, you either double the incentives, it might be a tuition incentive, or you add something to the normal acknowledgement gift that you give them. Maybe you add something that's of value to them and you work with one of those partners in your community. Like you give them they will donate for you a month of a gym membership, or you give them a case of cold brew coffee from Rise Brewing Company, or something that you know is of value to your parents. So now is the time to do that. Also, staff referral programs. If you don't have one that's active, for staff to refer both parents to you who are potential qualified enrollees and other staff members, now is the time to incorporate those. And let me give you a little tip to help staff really be incented to do this. Get them all a business card. It may have a line on it where they write their name, but get them business cards. It's a very cost-effective way to help them feel more professional, and you can build the return of those business cards into a staff referral program for them. So that's just a little tip to help with that. I also think parent ambassador programs are a way right in your own backyard that's very cost effective for you to engage enthusiastic parents in helping you to rebuild enrollment. Now, there are lots of different kinds of parent ambassador programs. The ones I'm talking about are specifically with tasks oriented toward generating inquiries, converting those inquiries, and retaining parents. And I have a blog on that. If you want to look at some details of how to build those, I did a blog on that. I'm going to be doing an article in Exchange Magazine on this. Blogs are available again under that resources tab on my website at the top. I've also done a whole series of COVID-19 support blogs. So refer to that if you need more details than we have time to give you here. I do want to talk about community partner programs. We've touched on this a little, Tony, and you mentioned some good ideas to incorporate into reaching out to local employers. But think right now, who are the main influencers for my parents, the people they would use for products and services in my geographical draw radius? And pick out maybe 10 of those that you are going to reach out to now and in the next few weeks to not only get in-kind donations, but think beyond that to things that you can do together that are mutually beneficial. Maybe they are going to come and be your expert for your Coffee with the Experts. They're your guest for this event that you have once a month. Or as you reopen, I think you should treat your reopening like a new school launch. And you set up a grand reopening event where you use some of those re-enrollment incentives. And maybe at that event, you can have exhibit booths where some of these local companies come in and offer their services and products to families. They all need to reboot and kickstart. So they're going to be willing to do this. Now, the key to get them to really be receptive to you, one of the main keys, is to go into this contact with them thinking, what's in it from me, not what's in it for me. You have things you can offer to them that make this whole relationship mutually beneficial. You have exposure, let's say, to 120 families. You have opportunities for them to become a guest for you at something or to exhibit for you. What are things that you can do that will help them, as well as what can they do to help you?
So Julie, I wanted to add in there just on that idea. There's a lot of things now that parents are likely seeking that they weren't seeking before COVID, right? So whether it be a pediatrician or a physician assistant or maybe a dentist, things that now where parents are asking new questions and not sure how to get them answered, it is a great opportunity in even speaking with those pediatricians or those dentists to have someone come in and have a roundtable with them, have those kind of conversations that you are sort of becoming the central element, as you mentioned, Julie, as a not only a community partner, but you're a community facilitator. You're facilitating those things, and you have a lot of space in your centers oftentimes. So early after hours or during the day, while you have the kids there too. So just to work on what you were talking about.
Absolutely. And, put those people on your website, have a page for community partners and links. So that's another way that you can do that. There's one other area. If you have employers in your area, larger employers who may be very open now to partnering with you. They're also trying to rebuild their businesses and provide things to their employees that might be different and special and new. Could you work out with one of or more of those employers what's called a vendor program, where they actually reserve a certain number of spaces in your school? They may offer to their employees a bit of a discount from the tuition that you publicly offer, and they make up the difference. So, think outside the box and think about all the opportunities in your community to partner with others who can help you build your enrollment during this time of reopening and beyond. So that's another opportunity.
That's a great point of view too, because as you mentioned earlier about, looking not only at community partners, but if you look at other employers too, they're going through the same thing. They
Yes.
want to attract and retain the very best right now. And
Yes.
it's a difficult time for them. So it is like, I've used the term oftentimes, Julie, it's like musical chairs right now for a lot of different organizations.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the music's playing and everybody's gonna have to take a seat, and some seats won't be there. Whether it be at your child care center doesn't have enough seats for enrollments because you're only limited to 10 per room. Maybe, the different businesses can't bring everybody back at the same time. But these kind of things are where the different owners of other larger businesses in the area are also looking at retooling how they do work. So I think, Julie, you're spot on about having those conversations. I've done those in the past, and if we have any Inspired Care 360 members out there, I have a template you can use for approaching those companies specifically for doing that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful.
So anyhow.
I think in closing, I know we're coming toward the time when we want to open this up for Q&A. I think it's a really important thing that you pick maybe 5, 6, 7 things that you haven't done that you can do now to help you rebuild enrollment fast and regain the momentum that you need to sustain your business. It's a time when, as we emerge from this pandemic crisis, much is going to be uncertain, but there are certain things that you can do now, and taking action like the ones we've talked about now can help you reach your enrollment goals faster.
Absolutely. So I would like to open it up. So if anybody has questions, if you want to put questions in Q&A for Julie and myself, we will be glad to look at those if you're interested. I do know that we've had the same question come up a couple times, so you've heard me sort of weave it into you. And that is the challenge that, all of us are dealing with, and that is that unfortunately the states are limiting the amount of kids we can bring back in. So in some situations, some of the owners may not be worried about getting the kids back, but the fact is that we can't even fill a center legally because we're told to. Now, one of the things I answered online, I would love to hear your opinion on it, Julie, but the way I was answering is, one is the opportunity to create urgency for getting those seats first, also a wait list opportunity, and don't overly discount those seats. That is your revenue. So those are some of my focuses. Do you have some thoughts on, that dynamic, because it's about holding tight and making things happen, even if all of your seats are full, but you're not at a capacity? We sort of have this yin and yang going on in the wrong direction.
Yes. Well, I think the transparency about what is happening is very important. I also think that if you do, as you mentioned, have a waiting list because you're restricted on the number of children that you can have in your center as you reopen, constant communication with that waiting list is going to be really important. And keep in mind, some of the parents coming back to you are going to need your services differently.
Right.
So keeping everyone abreast of what's available, not just in spaces available, but what's available to families who may not be at your school every day. Do you have some kind of online things they can do with your children? Keeping people engaged with you is going to be very, very important during this time, and also keeping them informed on a regular basis. Not waiting for your waiting list people to reach out to you, but reaching out to them, including them and engaging them in the kinds of things you're doing in the school, so that as things loosen up, and hopefully they will in a shorter period rather than longer, they are still bonded to you and wanting to give their loyalty to you as their center of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you on that. We had another question come in, and this was anonymous. It was, what are your thoughts on hold fees for parents that aren't ready to return? I know that for some of our families, they're paying full fee. Other ones are paying a hold fee, which we put in place. And then there's some who actually just unenrolled with the risk of coming back without. But if families, now that things are opening up, but still say, I'm not ready, even though the government have said we're opened, what are your thoughts about continuing hold fees?
I think that's going to be an individual decision, center to center. But I think what's really important for all those families is to continually engage with them. With the kinds of social media that you use, with things on your website that are of value to them, that keep them coming back to you, that keep them bonded to you. So it's a very difficult call because it's center to center, community to community. And you also have to look at how you operate and what kind of demand you know you're going to have as you look to determine exactly what's the process within which you're going to reopen. It's almost all goes back to really transparent and constant communication with your existing families, with your former families, and with your prospective families. And remember, like I said before, you almost have to treat the existing families like new prospects.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And, you know, one of the, you know, with what we're doing with our holds, we are continuing them throughout May, but June, we are considering for our families to say is at the point where we've been able to open up, what we can't do is we can't hold a spot if another family wants to come in and they don't want to pay for full tuition. So that, I agree with you, is it's a bit of a negotiation. But if we have a family who wants to pay only like 300 or 500 and hold out to September, you know, that's going to be really difficult when we have that spot we can give to someone paying full enrollments. So along with what Julie is saying, everybody, I would highly recommend the clarity in communications, being concise, and try not to leave things too vague so they'll get misinterpreted, because that misinterpretation leads to frustration and oftentimes leads to arguments. So if you're very clear and upfront about what your policy is, and it's okay to be genuine saying, hey, we do need this. You either come back on board in this time frame or we have to look at releasing your spot. Any thoughts additional on that, Julie?
Yes, now is a good time to put a banner on your website, preferably right at the top, that says something like COVID-19 questions answered, or something that has these kinds of questions and what you're doing in response to those kinds of questions for your specific school. That reassures parents, gives them the information you need, and also offers them the opportunity to ask their question. So having something like that on your website positions you well as caring for what they really need, but also as an expert resource for them.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful because, you know, a few folks, you talked about differentiation up front, and you also, we had a question who asked about some differentiators on the way through this. Putting a banner up there like that is a true differentiator. Now, you don't have to describe it, you don't have to put it on a blackboard, you don't have to put it on a poster, but when you have it on your website about your frequently asked questions, like Julie just mentioned, about what your approach is and your policy on different things are, you would be so surprised that other centers in your area are not being transparent. They're not communicating. They feel lost. Their staff or their families feel lost, and even their staff feel lost. So, you know, this is a time for over communication, if any time ever. So
I agree.
So with that said, Julie, we've come to our time, and we have, actually, wait a minute. I got one more question in, and we're at 1:55 here. So let me go ahead here, and it's a long question. So I'm not going to abuse us here and put us into something, but let's see. Do you think the parents are going to be less interested in big franchises with big rooms and many teachers? We are a low ratio school and wonder if that would be to our advantage. So I think it's a smaller school with smaller ratios as to a larger school. Now, I think that's all going to be regional, but what are your thoughts, Julie?
I tend to agree with you. I think it's going to really depend on the relationship you are building now with your families. what they're going to expect from you now and moving forward, and how comfortable they have become with the way that you provide the early care and education that they feel they need for their family. Whether that's a small school or a large school, it's a lot right now about ongoing communication. And keep in mind, some of these parents and the children are very bonded with the school and the teachers that they had before they had to stay home for this time period during the crisis. And so that constant communication with them and touch points with them will help them stay so that they want to continue to be your customer and your family. And the other thing is that they like the bonding with other families. So if you can arrange in your communications with them some opportunities for them to talk to the other families, maybe you make it a game night, or you have a Q&A session with families, or you have a staff reintroduction night ahead of your actual opening where they can communicate with staff and ask some of those questions. You can bond those people to you no matter what kind of setting you're actually providing early care and education within.
That's great. So throughout the agenda of what Julie has talked about with some really strong points around the marketing, around the incentives, about re-enrollment, about, you know, how we are connecting, one magic word has come up over and over again, and that's been communication. And
Yes, you know,
really secret sauce.
I think, Tony, I always say think in the prospect's perspective. And I think you really have to do that now. Think about what they need. And that's the kind of thing that you want to provide. And if you don't know, ask them. So as you move forward, if you keep thinking in the prospect's perspective for your school in your area and your target of families, you can come up with solutions that are meaningful for them and still allow you to retain your business and survive the way you, and thrive the way that you want to.
That is awesome. And to sort of end there, I fully endorse Julie on that, especially, you know, if you want to know how to differentiate yourself, call your families, ask them why they like you. Okay. If you want to know what they need, call your families, ask them what they need. You know, they are going to be open to it. So in line with Julie saying, communicating with your families, it is critical and key. So Julie, thank you so much for spending the time and investing the time with our family and our community out there. This is greatly appreciated. It's wonderful to have you on board for this. And thank you everybody for attending. So Julie, hopefully we'll do this some other time in the near future.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I wish you the very best. And to all of you out there, we wish you the very best too. We know that these are really troubling, challenging times, but they're also opportunistic, as Julie mentioned up front, not only dangerous, but opportunistic too. And it really is, you know, sometimes it's difficult to think about completely pivoting right now, and you don't have to. But what you do want to do is think about what it is that you want to accomplish, what your goals are, and re-envision that. It's a fresh time to take a start. So we wish you the very best. If there's any way we can help at Inspire Care 360, please let us know. We are there for you. And we wish you a very happy week for the remainder of your week. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to everybody very soon. Bye now.